Hello everyone. Today I wanted to talk to you about whether you can get an EB-1A green card if you work for a startup. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today is because I get this question all the time. So if you think you need to work for a big name company like Google or Meta to get an EB-1A visa, think again. It's not straightforward, but you don't necessarily need that big brand name behind you. So working for a startup is not necessarily an advantage or disadvantage. And I will get into the specifics today. Let's just say that you're an engineer, you got this great offer to work for a startup, maybe it's your own startup, and you want to take this opportunity, as many do, right? If you're an engineer, especially here in the Bay Area, maybe this is your dream. Maybe this is like really something you want to pursue. Before I move forward, let me tell you my background. My name is Priya Alagiri. I'm an immigration attorney. I have been working with engineers, for maybe like over 15 years now. We only handle EB-1A visas at my firm, and we only handle EB-1A visas for engineers. Let's talk about working for a startup and the EB-1A visa. So you're doing incredible work. You're building things from scratch. It's very inspiring. You're really excited, but nobody knows your company's name yet. Does that hurt your EB-1A visa application? Yes and no. As everything in U.S. immigration, there's never a clear answer. But let's break down the criteria, okay? Working for a startup impacts probably two of the criteria. And as you know, if you've seen any of my videos, there are 10 criteria and you have to meet 3. So which 2 criteria will working for a startup potentially affect? The first one is leading or critical role in a distinguished organization. So you're probably thinking, wait, I'm really high up at this startup. Maybe you're a VP of engineering or, something similar, or you're, the most senior engineer at this startup. So yes, you could meet the leading or critical role part of that criterion. But if you've seen my videos, you would know that there's 2 parts to that criterion. You have to have a leading or critical role. The second part is you have to have that role in a distinguished organization. So that's where working for a startup may influence whether you meet that criterion. So let's look at what the Immigration Service considers a distinguished organization. Historically, they've looked at things like size, customers, the length, the longevity of the company, kind of things like that. So you don't need to be, your startup, of course, doesn't need to be like Google or Meta or, Amazon and been around for ages, but you do have to have enough traction. I mean, your startup has to have enough, enough history to at least have customers or even a product, website. So it depends how you're defining a startup. You have to show to the Immigration Service that your startup is distinguished. And it could be with, a huge amount of VC funding, like from Sequoia or something like that. So that's where the tricky part is the distinguished part, and proving that. The next criterion that working for a startup could impact is the compensation criterion. So having a high remuneration in relation to others. So, typically startups pay a lower base salary but offer high equity options, RSUs. So you can use your RSUs, shares, things like that. You can use that to compare your wage to other wages for the EB-1A, but you have to compare apples to apples. So if you're going to compare if you're going to use your total compensation package, then you have to compare that against others in your field. But keep in mind, the Immigration Service doesn't say what you use to compare your wage. So maybe you'd want to compare it to other organizations, like yours. Maybe that's a better apples to apples comparison. Always try and, match it as much as possible. Okay, but let's talk about, those are two criteria that probably would be impacted the most by working for a startup. But let's talk about the criterion that is would probably be strengthened by working for a startup, and that's the original contributions criterion. And if you've watched my videos, again, you will know that there is a criterion called original contributions of major significance. And working at a startup, you might be better able to prove or to provide evidence of this criterion versus working for big tech, where there's much more confidentiality. Maybe, you're one of a big team that did something. All of that, that does count for the criterion. But I think if you're working for a startup, you would definitely have more objective evidence to show regarding your novel innovation, how it's being impacted. Maybe you could even get, supporting documentation from customers. I think you have more objective evidence readily available to you. If you're a startup engineer and you want to know if you qualify for the EB-1A visa, click the link in the description and schedule an evaluation with me. I would love to speak to you, and as always, please subscribe so I know that you're finding these videos useful.